Hey there everybody, this is Caitlin here, and today we have another Force of Will deck profile video for today. Today we're going to be revisiting one of the rulers that first came out in the first set of the Alice cluster, which is Pricia. I actually played Pricia in like my very first Force of Will tournament that I ever played. It was back when you could only use cards that were out in the Lands of the Seven Kings set. You couldn't use anything from Grim Cluster, because it was like the first set that was out at the time. We didn't have Twilight Wanderer, so the very first tournament we played, you could only use cards that were in that format, so that it would be fair to everyone else who couldn't afford to maybe import boxes from other sets. And like, I really like Pricia. She's one of my favourite characters, like from the lore. Probably one of my favourite Seven Kings, and it kind of feels sad that it seems like her appeal, like as a ruler, has gone down a lot as kind of the sets have gone on. A lot of people have said that she's kind of lost a bit of impact, considering, you know, there's not as much support for Sacred Beasts now, and that perhaps one of the newest beasts that's came out is kind of replaced the need to run her as the ruler. But I feel like, if anything, like the new Resonator or whatever that I'm going to be discussing a bit earlier, does actually help her a lot. Like, she is like a good ruler in her own right, and like some people say that maybe she's kind of lost her appeal a bit now that we have like Gil Lapis, who's kind of like hurting you if you're going to be using a Regalia that's essential for your deck or whatever. But I still quite like her, and like I still wanted to try and build a new deck for her, kind of adding a couple of new cards like from the newer sets or whatever to try and mix and match and see if like I could build a better build for her. So if you don't know what Pricia does, obviously she's pay 2 green to deactivate, and you can pay attribute for any 4 Sacred Beasts Resonators with the will of any attribute. So essentially you could just pay green or whatever, and I think that's what most people do, is that they pay it with green. And what happens is you can pay 2, and a target beast for sacred target beast or 4 Sacred Beast gains 100/100 until the end of the turn. And when she flips over, she becomes the awesome Pricia, commander of the 7 beasts. I totally love this artwork of her. She looks absolutely amazing. And depending on what resonators you have out on the field, she gains different abilities. So obviously she can get target attack if there's a light one. She can get swiftness if there's a fire one. She can get flying if there's a water one. And she gets plus 200/200 if there's a wind one. So essentially, if you have like all 4 of the Sacred Beasts out, you essentially get all that stuff, and she can become 1000/1000. Our God's Art, which is summon the Sacred Beast, is that you pay 3 green and then X. X is like how many other extra will that you pay, and you can search out that many 4 Sacred Beast Resonators depending on how much you paid, and then they can then obviously have to have different names and stuff. So the maximum you can pay is 4 to get all 4 Sacred Beasts. And then they go into your field, obviously. So, which is pretty nice. It's a bit costly because, like, essentially that's 7 for a God's Art, but I think it's pretty much essential, like, for a Pricia to try and get all kinds of Sacred Beasts out, which is kind of the main, like, gimmick for her. In terms of looking at Resonators for this deck, obviously there's going to be lots of Sacred Beasts, but there's a couple of extra ones that I've kind of slotted in there to try and support the rest of the deck. The first one is going to be one of our 1-drops, and it's going to be only 2 Elvish Priests. I was contemplating running a playset of them and running 4 of them, but I just felt like they were just taking up too much room in the deck, and considering that there's a couple of like the other 1-drop that we have is a bit of a better play than say this one, I decided I'd only run it at 2. It's kind of handy, like, to have like it, like, for a little bit of a boost, but all in all, I don't think it's essential for this deck. Not so much like as say my Reflected Frame Elves. So that's the reason why we're only running it at 2. The other 1-drop that we're running, which is like a bit more important, I feel like, to the idea of this deck, is the Beast Queen in Hiding. Or, well, actually, this is like the Beast Queen's Guardian, sorry. The Beast Queen in Hiding is like another Resonator, which is also in this deck. But the Beast Queen's Guardian is 300/300 as for a 1-drop. We can evolution it by paying 2, and we can put a counter on it, and when it gets a counter on it, it gains like 300/300. So it's a 1-drop that can potentially become a 6/6 by, say, turn 2, which is pretty impressive, which is why it's a bit more important than Elvish Priest to run. Going into our 2-drop, which is the only 2-drop that we have in this entire deck, really, is that we're running a playset 4 of the Fire Sacred Beast, which I always forget their names, so I always usually call them by the animal of them. I always call this one Chicken. I know it's meant to be like a phoenix or something, but I don't know why. I always think of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, and I think of like Ultra Mega Chicken, so I just always call this guy Chicken. He's a 2-drop. He's 400/400, so again, he's kind of in the area of getting thundered, but not so much. Not so bad, really, like, considering that we can buff these beasts up whenever we want. He has swiftness, and when he enters, he can deal 200 damage times the number of Sacred Beasts that he has to a Resonator. The only problem is if you drop him and there's nothing else on the field, even on your opponent's side, that kind of gets bounced back to him because he would technically only be the only other resonator in the field. So you need to be wary when you're playing him that his effect triggers no matter what. So if your opponent doesn't have anything on their side of the field, it can hurt you as well, which, you know, is a bit of a bummer. Going on to 3 drops, which is like mainly the crux of this deck, is that we've got all these 3 drops, is that we have 4, a playset of the Tiger Sacred Beast. I quite like the Tiger because mainly the Tiger is there to give you life. He also has target attack, and when he enters the field, you gain 200 life times the number of Sacred Beasts that you have. So, you know, you can easily like regain life just by dropping him at the right moment. You probably want to try and wait until like you've got a lot more beasts on your side before you drop him, because you do want that life gain to be like at least a considerable amount. You don't want to just drop him and like only get to 100 or something like that. It's not worth it after that. You want to try and drop him at the right moment so that you can get the most out of him. Another 3 drop that we have is we have the Dragon Sacred Beast. This is an 800/800. I'm quite surprised that I expected him to have flying, but he doesn't. And for some reason I expected him to have dragon as a subtype or whatever, like in terms of resonator, but he isn't, which is kind of sad because he's a cool looking dragon. But what happens with him is, actually I'll pick up this one so I can actually read it because I can't really see it on the hot stamp version. When he enters the field, if there's another Sacred Beast that we are controlling, we can draw a card. We can also pay 1, and another 4 Sacred Beast Resonator that we control gains 200/200 until the end of the turn. We can only play that once, sadly, so, you know, it's there for, like, a little bit of draw, and, you know, he is an 800/800 for a 3 drop, which is pretty amazing considering the rest of our Resonators or whatever, so he's quite a good wall. It's also a wee bit sad that he doesn't have flying, but, you know, regardless. Another 3 drop that we have is the Turtle, which is our water resonator. He's kind of nice in that when we drop him, depending on how many 4 Sacred Beasts we have, we can bounce a resonator on our opponent's side of the field. So say that I think it's like he counts himself as well. So like if we drop him and there's only 1, obviously like himself, then we can bounce something that was a 1 cost. So he's good, and he negates the first damage. Well, when he blocks, he prevents the next damage that would be dealt until the end of the turn, which is pretty nice. So he can like basically block damage for that turn, which, you know, because he's a turtle, he's also 500/700, so he's got beefy defense. So we don't need to worry about him dying straight away. The only other 3 drop that we have is the other Pricia I was mentioning, the Beast Queen in Hiding. I was debating what to run her at. I actually only have 2 copies of her because the other copies I have I gave to my boyfriend for his just his regular beast deck. His isn't a Sacred Beast one, it's just like a regular beast. So he's got my other copy of it, which is probably why I'm only running 2. I was debating running the newer Pricia, the Exploding Pursuant one, or whatever the actual title is called. But I realised with this deck, I'm probably not going to get that much access to Firewell on its own in order to pay her fire cost, because she does cost 1 green, 1 fire, 1 void, and, you know, the Horn of Sacred Beast doesn't help negating her like, neutral costs. So I decided I'd go with this one instead. She's a 700/700, she only costs 3, and when she enters your field, you can put an evolution counter on a target resonator with no evolution counters on it. So if we've still maybe got that Beast Queen's Guardian still sitting there and it's not got a counter on it, we can put a counter on it for free, which is pretty nice and means that we don't need to pay the 2 to do that. Also, if she was going to get increased defense or attack, we can double that instead for the end of the turn. And we can pay green and choose any number of attributes, and she becomes those attributes. So, essentially, if we don't manage to get other Sacred Beasts out, and, you know, we're going to flip our Pricia ruler, we can pay 1 green and give her all 4 until the end of the turn. Until the end of the turn, Pricia will gain all those effects while that effect is still in play. So we can basically give her swiftness and blah 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 and all that stuff for the end of the turn, at least. Which, you know, is kind of handy if like we haven't managed to build up our army of Sacred Beasts. But we really do want to build up our army of Sacred Beasts, mainly for the biggest resonator in this build, which is this guy who I always forget how to pronounce his name. I'm looking at it right now. I think it's Huang Long, the leader of the 4 Sacred Beasts. I could be totally wrong and be pronouncing that wrong, so my apologies if that's the case. But he's one of the newer beasts that's came out. He's like the divine beast, the leader of all the Sacred Beasts, and His deal is that when he enters the field, for each different attribute among all the wills spent to play his cost, we can search our main deck for a 4 sacred beast that shares that attribute and put it into our field. Then we shuffle our deck, and this card gets 100/100 for each 4 sacred beasts we control. So basically, he has 2 green cost and 4 void cost. So what happens if we pay at least 1 of each color for his void cost, then we can essentially search out all of the sacred beasts, like basically 1 copy of each of them, and then put them into our field, which is really nice, especially if, like, say we do that first and then maybe next turn we flip Pricia. Then we've got like 2 huge bodies like that are getting buffs from like all our beasts, like our army of beasts, which is pretty nice. I'm only running 2 of him right now because I feel like he's a 6 cost, so he costs more than, say, Maribel, who would also get like maybe a different kind of buff. But I felt like for running a Sacred Beast deck, it would be more favourable to run him because he makes full use of like the other Sacred Beasts in our deck. So that's it for Resonators. Looking at, say, spells and Regalia. Obviously, since it's a Pricia deck, we obviously want to run the Horn of Sacred Beasts. It's like the essential Regalia for this deck. And like I was saying, this deck is a little bit harmed if, say, you're going up against Primogenitor, because Primogenitor says, oh, you're gonna like pay an extra 1 if you want to like play your Regalia or whatnot. But like, I've not actually gone up against any Primogenitor so far since this came out. I've not came across anyone who's built it, so I don't know if it's as big, as hyped as people said it was going to be when like it was first revealed, so I'm not too sure. But for the Horn, it can produce the void cost for any of our 4 sacred beasts when we tap it. We can also tap it, and our J ruler gets 200 until the end of the turn. And since Pricia is our ruler, it gains imperishable. Also, we can we can banish this card, and target player shuffles all their magic stones from his or her graveyard into his or her magic stone deck, then shuffles all of the cards from their graveyard into his or her main deck, which, you know, I don't really play it for that effect mainly, but I mainly do it for the buffing Pricia and also for paying the void cost for the Sacred Beasts. Going on to spells and additions and such, we have 3 of Wall of Wind. Because I'm mainly running the beasts most of the beasts at either 3 or 4, I felt like I could only really run some of the spells at 3 as well. I feel like maybe running them at play sets of 4 would be clogging up the deck too much, and I really want to be able to draw into the Resonators more than running into the spells. So that's why I'm only running these spells at 3 mostly. Wall of Wind is pretty simple. It's only a 1 green, and we can cancel a target spell unless the opponent pays an extra 1. So essentially we're kind of like forcing our opponent to either pay extra for their very lovely spell and finding a way to protect ourselves. The next one that we're running at 3 is going to be Pricia's Call to Action, which is a really nice card to play with this deck, because essentially it's already just a 1 cost, but if our target is a beast, then we pay 1 less for it, and target Resonator gains swiftness and target attack until end of turn, and we get to draw a card, which is really nice. I need to double check whether that counts for Sacred Beasts as well, because technically Beast is in its name, so technically it is it's a beast as well, but I'm not quite sure if that still affects or whether it can only like target, say, the Beast Queen's Guardian or the Beast Queen in Hiding. I need to double check that actually before I start playing this properly, like in this deck. The next spell that we have is we're going to have one that I'm not quite sure whether I'm still quite happy to have it, but I do still quite like it in general. It is the Beast Queen's Counterattack. It's a 2-drop, and our target J/Resonator gains 400 till the end of the turn. And then that card and a target J/Resonator our opponent controls deal damage equal to their attack with each other. So essentially we can buff something for 400, and then it's instantly going to do damage. The camera refocuses there, it's going to deal damage. So it's similar to when the Battle Cow essentially gets its buff from its evolution, except we're using it through a spell. And, you know, that card gets 400 till the end of the turn, which is really nice. 2 other spells that we're going to be running that are going to be beefing up our little army of Sacred Beasts is we have obviously the Sprint of the Beast Lady, and we have Rapid Growth. I'm only running 2 of each, mainly because this one's a 3 cost and this one's a 1 cost, but this has obviously Remnant, so we can play it from the graveyard. Assuming that our opponent's not running Dark Alice and is not getting rid of our graveyard as they play. Obviously, the Sprint of the Beast Lady gives everything 600 to the end of the turn. And Rapid Growth gives 1 Resonator 400 to the end of the turn. And with Remnant, we can play it from the graveyard. So we are still technically getting 4 plays of Rapid Growth. We're just running 2, just to save from deck space. And the last card that we're running is going to be an addition, and it's going to be 3 of the Sissei, the Ancient Forest. This is here mainly to buff up our Sacred Beasts and our Beasts, because it gives all of them plus 200, 200. Also, whenever a Resonator is put into the graveyard from our field, we can pay 3, and if we do, we can draw a card. I never really use this effect, because it's just like, yeah, cool, we can pay 3 and draw a card, but, you know, I'd rather not, really. I'd rather just, like, keep that mana and, like, keep it for, like, a spell or something like that. This card is mainly here just to buff up our army of Sacred Beasts. Going into our Magic Stone deck, we are running 4 just normal 4 green wind stones, so we can, you know, get the cost for our spells and stuff. And obviously Pricia means that we can pay any will and such to pay for beasts and things, and for her Godsar, and for her deactivate. So running 4 green just as standard. I decided to run 3 of the Ruler's Memoria in order to cover the cost of the different colours of will that we will need for the Divine Sacred Beast, the Legion of Sacred Beasts, so that we can at least pay fire, water, and light in terms of getting his void cost, and then we can pay green from any of the other stones that we're running, really. Plus, you know, it's handy if, like, say we flip and we no longer can play the other Sacred Beasts, like, from Pricia, because she's flipped, so we need to, like, cover our bases there. The next 2 stones that we have is the Sacred Beast Memoria. I'm only running this at 2, mainly because every time, like, it appears, you have to, like, show a Sacred Beast in your hand, and if you don't, it comes in rested. So that's really the main reason I'm only running 2 of it, because I felt like if I ran 4 and I didn't draw into enough beasts or ever, I'd be, like, stuck with not being able to spend it. So I'm only running it at 2. It produces green, and if we pay 1 green and tap it, then 4 Sacred Beasts or a beast we control gains 200, 210 a turn. So I still quite like it, but I probably wouldn't run it at 4 just in case, you know, I run into it too often and then I have to rest it because I've not got anything in my hand. And the last stone that we have, of course, is like the norm. We have Little Red, the Pure Stone. I kind of wish I'd drawn like some of the other colours or whatever, because I've only really got the red one, and I've got one version of the black one that I have in my Sylvia deck, but the green one I think is one of the more expensive versions of this card, so sadly we'll just need to keep it with the red one, but you know, it could probably produce any kind of will that we want for this deck. And all in all, that's this deck profile for Pricia and her Sacred Beast. Let me know, guys, what you thought of it. Whether you'd like to try some different ideas for Pricia, considering that she does have all the support, but it just seems like people are too nervous to either keep with her, or maybe they're kind of like lured in by some other rulers or whatever. So let me know what you guys thought of this deck profile, and I'll see you all you guys later.